the scene.
Hi, thanks for coming, everyone, and hello to everybody online. My name is Patrina Law, and I'm working in the Digital Badging Commission for the RSA, and this is my colleague, Rebecca Purton, who's our wonderful researcher for the project. The Badging Commission was launched in May of this year, and we've got underway. We have at least one of our wonderful commissioners in the room with us today, Philip, and possibly online as well. So we're just going to talk about the RSA and the point of this commission and a little bit just to introduce what digital badges are and why we think they're important and relevant to us as an organisation. So I think I've done that bit there. So what's in the commission? And we'll be taking your questions at the end. So the mission for the RSA, for many of you, I'm sure if you're not already fellows, you will know that it's very much about ensuring that people fulfill their potential and that the world is a potentially rebalanced and regenerative future for us all. And all of the interventions at the RSA align with this mission, and fully that's to enable people, places, and the planet to flourish in harmony. The way that the RSA does that is under these three pillars of activity. We have our interventions, and the interventions are projects effectively. So for example, like the UK Digital Badging Commission and other projects, our Prosperous Places work and Regions and Cities of Learning. All of these kinds of activities and projects that we perform are called interventions. And our fellowship, that's 31,000 people and counting who form this group of global change makers, and some of you in this room are already our fellows, and we work with our fellows to really bring forward all of the ideas inside of our mission and learn from them. Our fellows contribute to our work, and it's really a unique network of people wanting to make change. And we've been around since 1774, so this other pillar, if you like, are our assets. And we've been giving presentations, lectures, bringing people together from all walks of life and really making change in this building since 1774. So it's a really wonderful organisation to be part of. So on to digital badging. I'm just going to say something about what a badge is, because it's okay if you don't know. And actually, Becca and I did a short presentation to our colleagues yesterday, and I had some quick feedback from a member of staff who said, I'm really glad you actually just explained what a badge was, because I wasn't really sure and I didn't want to ask. So I think it's okay to always introduce this concept, because we all know what a badge is, but a digital badge is something a little bit different. They have been around a long time now, about 12 years now. They were developed in the States, and they've had a huge global uptake. And a digital badge is something that has inside of it, it's not just an image that you collect and put in a portfolio, it's got metadata. And that metadata describes what you did to earn that badge, describes you, when it was issued, the date it may or may not expire, and in the future, it'll carry endorsements as well. So who endorsed you to get that badge? It'll describe the skills you may have earned. Digital badges can be very well formed, and digital badges can be quite badly formed too, which is one of our challenges we're addressing today. But effectively, it is this parcel that's verified to you that explains some skills you have earned. People have been issuing digital badges, as I say now, for about 12 years, and they are in their millions and millions of recipients and badges that have been awarded. And what we know people do with them is they ostensibly share them on social media. And really, depending on your demographic, you'll use your badge in different ways. But young people will share them with their teachers, their tutors, and whoever is around them in their educational environment, with their peers. And in the working population, people mostly put them on LinkedIn, as I know from research we've done, and we'll share them with employers and prospective employers. Put them on your CV, so that there's something that travel with you. You want to share them. You're proud of it. It's a thing you want to explain and share with the world. And that's the beauty of them, really. You have the ownership of the badge. It's not a certificate that's held in a cupboard somewhere. You can carry that around with you. And before Becca just moves on to talk a little bit about what our research has found, I'm just going to talk us through a few things that we can be sure that we know about digital badges, because this is a collection of data summarized about the use of them that have been drawn from a number of sources. And we can comfortably say that badges have proliferated. Over 200 million of them have been issued now in the world. It's an enormous number. So they're popular. People like getting them. People like giving them. We know they support learner motivation. They recognize achievement. And as we've just said, they are widely shared. And they predominantly occupy the space of non-accredited learning. So that's outside of formal education. And that's really the home that they have found. They work really well in that space. They successfully formed the backbone of the RSA's own Cities of Learning programme and will continue to do so in our expanded Regions of Learning programme going forwards. They really support those. So in terms of research that we've undertaken, those less well qualified and from lower socioeconomic groups have warmed towards earning digital badges because they say something, particularly when well branded and well formed, about skills that you have acquired that have fallen out of or not associated with formal education. So they have had a real strong meaning to those groups particularly. In the last 6 years in particular, people sharing badges has increased massively. So they're not going away, they're not a fad, they are a thing. They have been successfully deployed in a variety of international settings, and that is all kinds of education. That's higher education, formal schools, independent learning providers, regions of learning and cities. So many, many spaces. And also, I would say critically, and this is a term that's more used in the States, badges really support stars. And stars are those who are skilled through alternative routes. And there's a real movement in the States to recognize people's career progression who have who do not have degrees and who earn their worth, if you like, and their skills through different routes. So to sort of summarize what that means for us, building badges really build learner agency and identity. They make those unrecognized skills recognizable. They bring things to the surface that you can say, well, I can do this thing, but here's the badge to show that I really can. I'm a team player. I know about this particular thing. They are flexible and responsive to industry needs. You don't need a massive qualification structure set up with all of the bells and whistles in place for that. You can reward small pieces of learning at a time, and you can stop that if times have changed and you want to reward new things, and you can modify them. They're flexible. They're interoperable. You can imagine pathways of learning. In fact, we do, particularly with our Cities of Learning program, how you can stack and build badges towards something much bigger. The technology, I say, is straightforward. Actually, technology is not new. It's been around a long time, but it's easy to implement. The number of players out there who issue digital badges has reduced. There's not as many available now for people to use, but actually you can just simply Google and find someone who can help you to support issuing of digital badges and digital credentials. And I think I've touched on this previously, but when accumulated regionally, so in a particular place, they can have real meaning to support progression into work and also provide a sort of meta view of skills that people are gaining and wanting to gain in an area when they're used in a city and a region. So we're very excited about them. And the Digital Badging Commission was set up because we know all these wonderful things about them, but actually we've got the wonderful tech people doing their thing. We've got cities and regions programs doing their thing. We've got HE doing their thing, FE, independent learning providers. And then we have employers who don't always know quite what to make of them. And the commission is really aiming to bring people around the table to say, well, look, how do we make these things trustworthy? How do we enable them to stand up and be accepted? And what is their place? So funded by the UFI VocTech Trust and the RSA, the Commission is building a consensus and a movement towards the development and deployment of digital badges and credentials to recognize them and see that actually they have a role and they are already playing a role. How do we harness that role that they're playing? Mostly we need to look really foremost rather as to what makes a high quality digital credentials. I alluded to the fact that actually a digital badge cannot be very good. It can actually contain very little information. So what are those prototypes? What are those things we need to develop that will say, look, this is a good quality micro-credential, you can take it seriously? And how can we enable that consistency across suppliers so people understand them more, employers understand them and they know how to use them, and a learner will accept them and not see them as a gimmick? So what does that mean for the outputs of the Commission? So these are effectively the key actions that we're undertaking, and we have started. We began the project, as I say, at the end of May. We have a wonderful set of commissioners that we're working with, and also a huge group of stakeholders, which we're really lucky to have on board from all the sectors that I've mentioned. So we're going to be reviewing the standards and frameworks with these key stakeholders. So there's loads of wonderful frameworks in the world that will underpin various different sectors and activities that will underpin your skills learning. What are they? Which ones should we trust? Which ones should we build on? Which ones should we recognize? There's many of them, and some of them are pertinent to particular sectors, but actually we really need to be thinking about which ones we bring into digital badges. We're going to be making prototypes for use across a variety of institutions. So that is schools and HE, FE, etc., so that people are not confused by what it is they need to make, what are the ingredients for making a really good digital micro-credential. And we will be making recommendations, because that is the ultimate output of the Commission, to make recommendations to policymakers, to employers and learning providers for their wider adoption. And to that end, I'm going to hand over to Becca now, who's going to talk about the research work that's undertaken that's got us this far.
Great, thanks, Patrina. I've got too many things to hold. There you go. Yeah, so we conducted a landscape review to figure out kind of where digital badges are at currently. This comprised of a literature review as well as case study interviews. So we conducted a literature review of the research that's available, particularly looking into the sectors where digital badges are being perhaps especially utilised or underutilised, where the key benefits and challenges are in different sectors. We looked into their credibility and value, their inclusivity and access. We looked into standards, frameworks and digital skills wallets. And then we also looked to the future of badges as well. But as I said, there's not the literature review didn't necessarily capture absolutely everything that exists out there in terms of how badges are being used. So we also conducted some case study interviews to complement the findings from the lit review. And we're kind of calling that an overall landscape review of where badges are at currently. And case studies, we spoke to people representing the UK, the US and Europe, including One EdTech, IBM, Open Badges, Hull College of Further Education, My Equals, and the RSA Regions of Learning Network. So we looked into kind of various different areas where badges are, I guess, related to. One of these areas was policy. And as part of the landscape review, we looked into policy examples internationally, including in South Korea, South Africa, Singapore, Canada, and Australia, all of which are using successful national skills frameworks or credit bank systems. And that supports the recognition and understanding of learning and skills development at a national level, and incorporating digitally badged programs or courses and micro-credentials as part of those frameworks. And essentially, the UK in comparison is behind. We know that the government are looking towards focusing on skills-based policy in the UK, set to kind of focus on lifelong learning in particular, and looking at opportunities for people to continue their learning and skills development throughout their lifetime beyond sort of formal traditional learning as we might think of it. And so the lifelong learning agenda, for example, is something that perhaps digitally badged opportunities could support. We know that the government wants to develop a truly flexible skills system through supporting increased access to technical qualifications and flexible modular pathways. But we do know from the past that these kinds of provision do tend to be more likely to impact those who are already well educated and who have access to good quality education. And it does tend to be those who are from lower socioeconomic groups or who are less likely to engage with kind of traditional forms of education who will be, I guess, captured by this policy. And actually, the RSA's Rebalancing Adult Learning report in 2022 found that only 7% of the UK government's funding for post-18 education is spent on those with poor basic skills. And that's despite the fact that there are 17 million adults in the UK who lack a level 2 qualification. And so how could digital badges support the kind of lifelong learning agenda in the UK? Well, they offer and evidence lifelong learning opportunities with kind of flexibility and within less traditional learning environments. And that means that they're more likely to reach a wider range of potential learners. This is obviously just one example of a kind of policy provision. I'm sure you can think of lots of your own examples in the UK and internationally. And in the written landscape review, there are further examples as well. But let's move on to the next area, which is education. Badges are used in every stage of education from primary school right through till further and higher education, often used to kind of complement or supplement the curriculum. So in terms of primary and secondary school, badges have been used by all of these institutions, so you can see, to, like I said, complement the national curriculum. So, for example, the Children's University are doing great work to provide badged opportunities for, I guess, more kind of like durable or essential skills. So things like communication, teamwork, citizenship. Skills Builder are a great example where they have 8 essential skills and also a framework with different levels for each skill. And they take people from literally from primary school right through to adulthood and their kind of further career development in similar sorts of skills like communication and teamwork and creativity. We also have Daydream Believers, which is a great charity that was founded by one of our own fellows in Scotland. They provide I guess, a kind of creative alternative, which is a GCSE or AS equivalent, which is awarded by digital badges, and also an online learning profile where learners can collate their badges into the same space. And of course, we have RSA's own Spark, which is just launching its beta phase. That is for helping kind of young learners and entrepreneurs develop their skills as well. And that will be they will be awarded digital badges for their completion of learning modules. So when we move on to further education, we conducted an interview with the executive director at Hull College of Further Education. And something she told us was that badges are the future of CVs. It's all about employability. And that's one of the key reasons that she's encouraging her students to participate in badged opportunities. So there was almost nothing in the academic literature on badge use in further education, which was partly why we kind of utilised our networks and sought out a case study example of badges being used in further education, because we know that they're a great setting for badges to be used in. And the director told us that the college offer a plethora of online courses for their students and staff, and they're to supplement their kind of standard learning, I guess. And they are around, again, durable and essential skills that are particularly enhancing young people's future employability. They're also around kind of relevant topics for life, I guess. So things like sustainability. They also have courses for online dating and gender pronouns, which I'm sure are useful for young people as well. And the overall aim is to build up a bank of badges in a kind of online profile to help those students represent and communicate their skills to future potential employers. And they've really seen key benefits in terms of these enhancing students' motivation and progression, and particularly for those who are less typically academic and less likely to succeed academically or gain sort of formal academic qualifications. And then we move to higher education. And unsurprisingly, there's lots more in the academic literature on higher education, just because of the nature of them being more likely to publish academically. So there are loads of examples of badges being used as part of university courses. So within like modules within longer courses of study, and also kind of additional courses to enhance student and staff employability based skills. And so there are a wide range of universities in the UK and Ireland who are utilising badges in various ways. The Open Universities platform, OpenLearn, has over 1,000 free courses available in addition to their graduate study, and many of those are digitally badged. They've also conducted some research, and they have found that students who, I guess that's Patrina was saying, actually, students who are taking those badged courses are much more likely to be sharing them with employers now than they used to be, which is great to see. And since May 2023, OpenLearn have issued over 250,000 badges to their learners. Purdue University are in the US who are sort of trialing utilising badges as part of their teacher training course. So they've chosen one module as part of the course, and they conducted a research study where they had a control group and a badged group for this particular module. Both groups learned the exact same content, and both were assessed on it at the end. And they took baseline and endline measurements, and they found that the badged group had seen a significant increase in their self-perceived and actual knowledge compared to where they started and compared to the difference seen in the control group. And I think that's a great example. Shows the kind of motivation and progression that badges can influence students, which is great to see. We also see that they improve retention rates, particularly on longer courses of study when when it's broken up into smaller chunks and people can earn badges along the way. That improves their motivation and retention, awards employability skills, and rewards and supports workforce skills. And they are, offered within higher education to supplement student and staff skills. So let's move on from higher education to workforce needs and skills matching. We are living in a rapidly evolving tech-reliant economy, and in some ways there's a bit of a mismatch between the skills that the workforce have compared to the skills needed for the jobs kind of now and in future. And there is also a disparity in the economic challenges of job losses and kind of stagnation in productivity on the one hand, contrasted with labour market shortages due to that mismatch between required and actual skills. And I think what this highlights is that the current system of education and upskilling needs innovating. We need to equip individuals with relevant skills for the current and future workforce needs, as well as for their personal career development. And so in some ways, badged opportunities, because they're really agile and flexible, could be ideal for supporting that kind of quick upskilling that we need. And also when they are situated within the business and enterprise sector, they're also kind of ideal for, I guess, those sectors can identify the skills that are like the skills gaps, the skills that are missing in those sectors, and helping to, I guess, fill those gaps by supporting people in upskilling through badged opportunities and programs as part of their work within those contexts. I guess one challenge that has come up frequently in the literature is that some employers don't recognise or kind of understand what badges are. There's a lack of awareness among lots of employers. And so that is leading to a lack of, I suppose, like valuing badges just because employers don't know what they are. And so that's kind of leading to a lack of value and credibility of badges. And so that's something that the Commission really wants to address in terms of socialising that to key stakeholder groups, and particularly that of business and enterprise. Another challenge that we found is that although HR platforms have the potential to read the metadata in badges and to match up the kind of the skills metadata that badges contain with the skills that are contained in like job ads, so you could do this kind of tech skills matching thing. HR systems, many of them are not actually developed well enough to be able to do that. And so there's kind of a lack of customer demand because there's a lack of a knowledge of this being possible. And so that's leading to a lack of kind of further investment and development of those systems. And that's something that we, as part of the Commission, want to see happening more frequently with more investment into those systems, because there's so much potential there. Oh, I'm going to use IBM as a case study of a business enterprise who is doing a great job at badging. David Lisa is one of the commissioners, and he led a pilot kind of badged program at IBM in 2015, and they saw a 694% increase in the completion rate of the course that they were offering compared to like prior to including badges. And within a year, it was the largest badging program at the time. He highlighted that the key ingredients for success, if you are incorporating a program into a kind of business enterprise, it must be made essential to the business need. It must have buy-in and support at executive level within the business, and it must be marketed well so that people understand what it is, what's the offering, how's it going to benefit them, and why should they participate. So, of course, IBM have this hugely successful and wide-reaching badge program. And they also have the added value of a platform called Talent Match, where they can match skills metadata from badges to skills in job advertisements so that they can kind of match up people through skills identification. So let's move on to digital skills wallets. There are so many of these that exist. Lots of them are free and accessible. They are great for things like portability, security, transparency, communication of skills. And there are a range of codes that have been developed for digital skills wallets. And some, although not all of them, use open technology. One challenge is that there is no shared consensus on a single kind of digital skills wallet in the UK. When they are interoperable, it means that you can upload digital badges or other digital qualifications like transcripts or micro-credentials all into the same place. And when you can do that, when they are all based on open technology, it means that a digital skills wallet kind of acts like an online CV. So that gives learners agency and control over their learning and skills and experiences. And it kind of makes them, I guess, allows them to be curators and guardians over their own achievements. And multiple people that we interviewed enforced that a badge's real value is in its ability to support the communication of skills to potential employers. And that's why digital skills wallets are such a core part of digital badges. There was also some really interesting YouGov research in the literature from a few years back in the UK, which found that 2/3 of young people felt that they were really confident and great at articulating their skills and experiences to potential employers when they were in job interviews. But contrastingly, 2/3 of employers didn't want to hire these young people because they didn't feel that they were good at articulating their skills and experiences. And I think that disparity in communication and understanding is something that digital skills wallets could be really primed to address. Like I said, when everything is interoperable, it's great, but interoperability has its limits. So not all badges or badging platforms are use like open technology, and when they're not open, it means that you can't put badges from different places into the same skills wallet if they're using closed technology. And so increasing the opportunity for interoperability is essential for digital skills wallets to become ubiquitous in future. And for true interoperability, I think stakeholders and systems need to agree on a kind of shared language, quite like a common set of technical protocols and standards. And this is a key part, as a key consideration of the Commission as well. Oh, this is Eric Roussel, the CEO of Open Badge Factory, who I interviewed, and he said that badges are connectors, not an end product, which I think is a great example of kind of what I was just explaining about the importance of digital skills wallets and what they can do. So the final key area that we're going to cover is standards and frameworks. It's really tricky to discern the quality and value of a badge, and also what one badge is like and what it means compared to another badge and compared to other qualifications and accreditations that people have. Like, what does it really represent? And so to enhance the clarity and rigor and to kind of increase the understanding of badges and therefore, as a result, the credibility and value, I think it would be beneficial to kind of more widely adopt a badging standard or framework, and certainly to have clearer or firmer guidelines on the metadata that a badge should contain. One EdTech have the Open Badge Standard and Skills Builder have the Universal Framework. And these are both great examples of badge-based standards that do exist. And they have seen significant international adoption, but there does still remain limits on the use or universality of any framework. I think when a nationally recognised validation framework is adopted, the way that it's kind of systematic and top-down, it does benefit the robustness and rigour of badges. It does enhance their credibility and understanding and recognition of learning, and it makes it much more visible and understandable to all the key stakeholder groups involved. So from those in policy to the learning providers, to learners themselves, to employers. And there are a few great examples internationally of frameworks and standards that exist. So, for example, in the US, the American Credential Framework is currently being developed. And the idea of that is that it promotes transparency, comparability, and quality assurance. And it has 8 different levels that cover knowledge, skills, and abilities. South Africa also have a national qualifications framework where they have 10 areas of competence, and within that they have 10 level descriptors to help qualifications designers to develop specific content which is like aligned to that framework. And within both of those, they incorporate micro-credentials as recognised forms of learning, which are aligned to those respective skills frameworks. And so I think what's really important here is that we create a common language and use of digital metadata to help all the stakeholder groups involved to kind of understand and be able to participate in quality assurance. And a core element of the Commission is to research, identify and consider potential frameworks or standards for universal adoption in the UK and sort of work out how we go about doing that and considering how this could best be applied to most benefit the key stakeholder groups involved. I'm aware that has been a very whistle-stop tour of lots of information, but that is kind of an overview of some of the key findings from the landscape review. We are expecting the full written landscape review to be published in time with more information. But yeah, if there's anything else that you would like to know about, please do ask questions afterwards or get in touch with Patrina or I, because we would be happy to share more with you. And back to Patrina for next steps.
Thanks, Becca. Hopefully that was a very whistle-stop tour of an immense amount of research and a huge number of conversations that have taken place over the last 6 months with a number of key players in the digital badging world, digital credentials world, employers and educational institutions. So thank you. So what are we doing next? These are our next steps. Effectively, this is our work for the next 12 months, but we are currently running a set of stakeholder workshops people who've been recommended to us from our commissioners, those people that we know. If you're interested in getting involved in a stakeholder workshop, please do get in touch. But this is to really develop our ideas and thinking about what the UK Digital Badging Commission should be recommending. And within that, I mean that realistic recommendations, what really is going to be achievable? What could we do in this country? We'll be developing some prototypes, we'll be publishing, communicating, getting people involved and talking about it. The own RSA badge standard, which is seen as a kite mark of quality for a lot of our cities of learning, will be reviewed. And we hope that by this time next year, roughly speaking, we'll have a set of policy recommendations with socialization and buy-in from employers. And so that we can really start talking about what does a lifelong learning record look like? What's its digital place in the world? What does it ingest? Is it digital badges? Is it other things? We're aware at the moment that there is an education wallet record that's been piloted in Oldham in the UK, which is a digital representation of someone's qualifications when they leave school. How could we enhance that? How could we build into that a set of non-accredited learning elements that are digitally approved and recognised by the UK government as being relevant to someone's skills development that could be used throughout their life? Where is the role for digital badges in that? So I think we've talked enough. We'd like to ask you to ask us some questions. We've just seeded a few questions that we'd like others to think about. And yes, happy to take questions now.
Amazing. Thank you, Patrina and Rebecca. If we do we have any questions in person? Speak into that microphone.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for such a extensive whistle stop. My name is Clementina, and I'm the founder of 6Cs. So 6Cs bridges the gap between schools and employers. And it's been a challenge, trying to sort of like build a platform. It's a career preparation program, so it focuses on teamwork, problem solving, and digital literacy skills. So it's really exciting to hear this, because we're working towards a skills, like a workplace skills passport. So it'll be quite interesting to know how there will be this common benchmark, particularly in terms of different industry sectors. And the second thing that you've sort of like touched on, which is something to think about for young people, is about how they could use the skills badges to articulate the skills and competencies required for different industry sectors. So it would be useful to have your views on those two key points. Thank you.
So Becca touched on the fact that there are a range of different digital skills wallets and proprietary systems. There's open code that anyone can use to develop their own skills wallets. And we're also aware that educational institutions globally are also issuing digital transcripts. So when you leave school or college or university, you've got your qualifications captured digitally. So all these things exist. They don't necessarily speak to each other. There isn't one single one that everyone's using. But I think the way that we think about it from the Commission's perspective, if I could say that, is that you imagine a world, or you could have imagined a world 10 years ago before COVID, where we didn't really imagine that we could rock up with our NHS app or our COVID pass to be able to access services. I think we're looking at a future where we can see examples in other countries where your education record is not just your formal education record, it's all of those other skills that you've acquired that other people with the right standards have issued that supplement that learning, so that that stays with you throughout the whole of your life. But at the moment, one of the problems we're trying to address is that there isn't one single way of doing that. There's lots of ways. And actually, the Commission is trying to bring people around the table to talk about what realistically we could do to address that. Is there a proprietary system we should go with? Can the government continue to develop its own digital education record to achieve that? What would it take? And making sure that we're listening to employers so that we know that they can ingest that material. So Becca was talking about the fact that learners very much like digital badges because it enables them to describe back what they know about themselves, but also what does an employer do with that? So we've got to be mindful that it's all very well recommending that we have these wonderful wallets, but if employers can't read them, really understand them, they're no good. So hence we need to talk very much with employers. And could you repeat the second part of your question, please?
About helping have in order to show their suitability. And linked to that, it's also the age range where
Yes. So articulating skills, as we've said, is something that badges enable you to do. But I think the other thing to say about that as well is that what we have found with the kind of agency, that sort of the ownership of owning your own digital wallet, your digital badges, is that you can hide or show things according to who you're speaking to, what opportunities you're going for. They're not just there publicly for everyone to consume all the time. It's your choice as to how you present them. You might want to hide things over time or present new things. So yes, I think there is that flexibility built into them, which we've got a long way to go to fully utilize. From the research I did in my former role, I can honestly say that every age has earned a digital badge, depending on the subject matter. And the thing that was interesting amongst all the different demographics that we drilled down into was that the key difference between people's desires were, I need this for work, I'm doing this for fun, I'm doing this because I need to understand my grandchildren's maths homework, or I'm doing this because I love learning and I got something else for it, or I'm not able to retire yet. Differences were in the way people were using them and sharing them as a credential. And so those were the key sort of markers in the sand. It was definitely that sort of 25 to 55 age group that were predominantly putting things on LinkedIn, on CVs with employers. And younger than that, it was very much about schools and tutors and people in other people's social networks. So it was, but it didn't, the technology didn't exclude any particular age group. It seemed to have a resonance for different reasons for different age groups, which was surprising and interesting.
Thank you. We'll just take one more in person and then we'll move to some online questions.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Tim Richards from Navigator, the Navigator badging and pathway platform that grew out of Citizen Learning with support from the RSA and Sitting Guilds and UFI and others. So we're seeing sort of firsthand, working with 7Cs across the UK, the really amazing impact that digital badges are having on learners. SEND learners, for example, aren't currently recognised. Only 20% of SEND learners come out with some sort of recognition. Teachers and increasingly employers as well. But I was just thinking about the sort of the ecosystem piece and how we drive the next sort of wave of adoption. And think about some of my journey was working with Mozilla Foundation and Mark Luber as well from One EdTech. And we transferred the standard in 2017 from One EdTech from Mozilla to One EdTech. And that led to a massive adoption from 7 million badges to that hockey stick to 75 million and then onwards to 200 million plus. So I agree, I think about the system innovation that needs to take place. And so I'm thinking about where does that innovation need to take place? So for example, UCAS at the moment, a little while ago, we tried to convince UCAS to adopt some points around digital badging. It's perhaps around this quality piece as well. But there isn't that adoption from UCAS. So if we get points attached, that could be absolutely transformational for people who get recognition for learning outside of formal education, which helps make widening participation, a real thing. So I just think it'd be worth thinking about those ecosystem plays, which can't be made by individual organisations, but can be made collectively. And a couple of other things just to consider to throw in is that I think, what wasn't mentioned there is digital skill standards that are based on big data. So, how actually skills are being described in the ecosystem. So things like Lightcast, I think, are really, really important. And also, we've just released a framework, Creative Commons, for anyone to use for any platform as well. So if people want to look at that, that could go into the research as well. But the ecosystem bit, I think, is really key, not the technology necessarily, because the technology's already got us to 200 million, hasn't it? But the ecosystem is quite stubborn, but collectively, I think that's something the Commission could be really powerful in influencing, bringing about change.
And I think that's what we have tried to achieve or are achieving with the commissioners, because the commissioners do represent all the different tiers in education and employers and the tech and the government. And some of these people have not met around the table before. So I think, and UCAS is in there. So yeah, I think that we're aware of that, and you know, we need to address that. And so conversations have been very helpful so far. And obviously we were mindful of the new government, and so keen to see what's happening with different skills agendas and such. But yes, I completely agree, and it is on the table.
It's great.
Great, thank you. We're just going to take a couple questions from online. Ben, were there any coming through on the chat that you wanted to highlight?
Hi, yeah, I think we had a couple questions online. The first one was from Doug. Doug, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
I think Patrina's already answered my question, actually. I think I was prefiguring the QA part of the presentation.
Okay, great. Do we have any other questions from online? I think someone had their hand raised earlier. Did they still want to ask their question? Cameron
Thank
King?
you. Thank you. I was excellent webinar. Thank you so much. I was just the question I wanted to ask was in relation to working with national employer bodies and getting buy-in from sector employer groups or large national employers who priority sectors like retrofit, green skills, etc., getting them around the table to create bite-sized entry-level micro-credentials, particularly around retrofit, which is, I work for local authority on the Skills and Employment Program lead for Kingston Council in Greater London. And our priority is around climate change and net zero, and working with regional partners to wake up to the fact that for transition, we're going to need a huge amount of workforce, and micro-credentialing and digital badging provides a fantastic opportunity. And I just wanted to know what research has been done with sectors, basically, and employer groups.
Thank you. And it's a very good question, because it is a really tough nut to crack. And I think of all the challenges we've got ahead of us, the employer engagement one is probably one of the biggest. I think, as it's been mentioned, the tech side is robust and is developing at pace. But getting the employer bodies around the table is really critical. And the focus for 2025 for the Commission in terms of its networking, its comms, is particularly employment sectors, and specifically getting buy-in from employers and winning their trust and demonstrating in practice the power of digital credentials, particularly as we see them working in the regions and cities. They're used to award skills development for those skills needed in particular regions, whether that's for the green economy or hospitality sector or in social care, whatever it might be. Those pathways to learning have been developed specifically for those regions, awarded with digital badges. So yes, but the recognition of them by employers tends to work well when you engage the employers in the development of the badging programs in the first place. And if you're an employer that's never been involved in a badging program, you don't know really what they are. And so it is those large organization groups that we need to get to. So that's a very good point. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrina. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Great. Thank you, Cameron. I think we have a couple more questions in person. Did you still want to ask your question?
Yeah, it was more a follow-up to Tim's comment, actually. So I think I read recently that UCAS are going to scrap the personal statement. So digital badges being one way in which learners can demonstrate a much wider picture of their achievements at the point of application to university could be, you know, the time's right for that conversation and that opportunity, hopefully.
Yes, absolutely. And whilst we've seen the prototype, the pilot of the digital education record, we're all sort of getting very excited about the fact that we'd like to plug other things into that education record that speak to all of those other sorts of skills that you would have put in your personal statement. Or even if you weren't considering going to university, everything else that says something about you that's really important about you as a person that makes you employable. I understand that that can be done, but we've got to make sure that even if we're going to plug all of that in, what makes it a trusted source? How can we persuade the government that we can develop something that's trusted? Also, how do we get other people to ingest that data? It's great to have your QR code to say what your qualifications are and all of your badges, but how do I read that? Is that a massive system shift? Is that going to cost me a fortune as an employer? I don't know. But I should just add as well, we're talking with the NHS, the biggest employer outside of the armed forces, who are looking at this moreover for their workforce as well. So you're absolutely right. I don't think we're there yet, but I think it's an ideal scenario that we'd all like to get to.
Yes, and crucially, attach the evidence.
Yes.
So that's the big difference between personal statement.
Yes. Yeah. I should repeat that for those online, that you can attach the evidence. That's right. Yeah, within the digital badge. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we have another question in person.
Andrew Hadley. What engagement has there been so far with the government as such, both at national level, but also with the country governments in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and other devolved administrations? And what view are you getting from them? How supportive are they being?
So the relationship so far is we've mostly been talking to two parts of the DFE at the moment, and also Warwick, who are undertake a lot of the skills research for the government as well. But I suppose most critically, the bit of the DFE we're talking with is the group that is developing the education wallet, because I think that's critical to how we move on with this as a project, and so that the recommendations we make are realistic. Can they be? So the project to create the digital education record was obviously started by the previous government. So we're keen to see that and are in touch with the DFE to see if that's going to be carried forward. And it looks like it is. So I would say I'm feeling very positive about that. So their staff, DFE staff, are involved in our stakeholder workshops as well, and are represented on the commission too. So we're involving them as much as we can, and we're just keeping track of who's sitting in what seat at the moment to make sure we're speaking to the right people.
With the administration?
I can't speak about that. No, I'm sorry, I don't know about that. From the perspective of the RSA, though, we have strong, robust cities of learning programs in some of those regions, and are exploring developing them in others that use digital badges to recognize skills development to bring people into work. So in fact, some of those areas in those devolved areas are already using the technology and have quite robust skills matching systems as well in place to bring people into work using digital badges. So for some, it won't be a new concept at all.
Brilliant, thank you. Ben, have we got any more questions online?
I think Doug's now raised his hand. He might have something to say.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on the quality assurance side of things. So having worked with City and Guilds, who are a awarding body, what's the role that the RSA is playing here in terms of the quality assurance framework? Are they consulting on the framework, which is then implemented by organizations that have a quality assurance process? And if so, what's the quality assurance process for the quality assurance process? Or is the RSA planning to act as an awarding body themselves?
No, the RSA is not planning to act as an awarding body. We are, with the commissioners and the stakeholders for the commission, reviewing the standards and frameworks that are available to us so that we can enable, when we set up our prototypes, to ensure that standards and frameworks are referenced. So we can't say, we're not going to create a prototype badge for any skill that comes out of engineering skills development or childcare. We're not doing that. We're not telling you which standards should be used, but we'll be recommending that standards are used. So, and then there will be frameworks within that as well that will be, so for example, say, for example, you are wanting to develop a qualification in childcare. We will know that it, or not necessarily a qualification, a non-accredited learning element to your employment that includes a digital credential. The framework and the standards that are contained within that need to be seen inside the metadata of that badge. But what we're not doing is saying what those frameworks have to be, because it's a level of detail that we can't possibly police. And as you say, do the QA on the QA. But I think what we've noticed with digital badges as they currently stand is many digital badges are issued without any reference to any kind of a framework or standard. They just name what the person did and what date the badge expired. So I think there is a need to sort of suggest there's some top level frameworks. Certainly there's a skills classification activity. We know that there are skills databases as well that use the same nomenclature for jobs. and we'll ensure that those are referenced as well. So we can only suggest what makes a good quality badge, but not specifically list the frameworks that we're asking you to include, because it's a job too big for this commission.
Great, thank you. And I think I saw there was one other question from Jonathan in the chat, if we just want to go to that one.
I think Jonathan might have been responding to another point that was made in the chat rather than a question for the speakers, but happy to be corrected, Jonathan, if you want to.
Hello there. Sorry, just unmuting myself. I deal mostly with large employers, and I'm just curious as to why it seems they don't engage as they might with digital badges, just from your research and experience. And a related question for most employers and employees, LinkedIn is really key, and I'm wondering if you've got any connections with them as part of the project.
Yes, one of the examples that Becca gave was the IBM program, particularly in America. So I think in North America, large employers are engaging with it, and I think perhaps the UK is a little bit lagging, as we've suggested. And also previously the comment about regions and cities of learning, where you engage employers in the badging program, there is buy-in from employers. But moreover, we are questioning what the software that employers are using to review resumes. How can we influence that? How can we sort of recommend that there's modifications made in order to read badges? With regard to LinkedIn, we have someone on the commission from LinkedIn, so they are represented on the commission as well, because I don't think personally that LinkedIn is well, you can list all your skills, but you can't see the visual representation of a badge as it currently stands. And I think it would be great to make some progress there as well, because if it is the main place that people share their badges as it currently stands. Thank you.
Great. I think we have time for one more question, if there was anyone in person or online that wanted to share.
Thank you. I just wanted to find out, would there be sort of like a common algorithm that sort of like measures or tracks data in terms of assessment in order to award a badge or a skills recognition?
We're not, as a commission, developing technology ourselves. I think we are recommending the pathway for a pathway that will enable technology to speak to each other. So we're sort of pushing, I think Becca talks a lot about interoperability between systems, but assessments is not something that we're dipping our toe into as a commission.
Oh, that's helpful. Thank you.
Amazing, thank you. I think that brings us to the end of this Coffee House event. A big thank you to Patrina and Rebecca for hosting, and for everyone joining in person and online. The recording from today will be shared on Circle, our online community platform. If you're a fellow, please come and find us, and we'll help you get registered if you're not already. I know there were lots of comments and resources shared in the chat. We can compile those and send them across in a post-event email as well. Our next event is on the 30th of October, looking at innovation corridors. So yeah, I hope to see you there. And unless anything to share again, then yeah, thank you so much and see you soon.